life sure has gone better. Ever since I bought the new Samsung Galaxy Tab S9 Plus, I cannot believe how much I needed this device. Work and productivity on levels I've never seen before. And man, I can use this tablet for just about anything. I'm using this tablet like a laptop. I'm using this tablet to read my mangas. Hell, I'm using this tablet to watch my Netflix and my Hulus. What can't this tablet do? Oh look, there's my old tablet. I don't think I need that old piece of crap no more. Might as well throw it away. This thing is junk now. Goodbye. And thanks for nothing. Tablet wasn't even that
good. Wrong. This tablet is still good and it's still worth buying today. Hey everyone, welcome back. Notice anything different? That's right, new flag alert. Oh! So I don't know about you guys, but I love emulation. And pretty much over the years growing up, I have tried emulating on a lot of the different devices that I've had. But I specifically emulated on my laptops and my computers because when I tried to emulate on my Android tablets that I've had, it didn't really work so well. But emulation has been a huge part of my life growing up, and I've always dabbled in emulation. But growing up, every time I got a new tablet, I was super excited to see the difference of what this tablet could do against the previous old tablets when it comes to emulation, and to see if I could run my games better on these newer devices. So currently the tablet that I daily drive now is the Samsung Galaxy Tab S9 Plus, which I actually recently did a video on if you want to check that out. But with this tablet, it's the most powerful Android tablet right now on the market. And even though it's super powerful and it has all of these really nice and neat features on it, and yes, while this tablet is an emulation beast, that is not the star of today's show. The Tab S7 Plus is. Wait, hold on. You're doing an emulation video on a 3+ year-old tablet while you got a way stronger tablet right now that you should be doing a video on? Okay, here's the deal. I wanted to showcase that this tablet, while it's 3 years old, it still has so much to offer now. Just like how I showed in my previous video when I was comparing and contrasting the S9 Plus with the S7 Plus. While the S9 Plus is absolutely amazing, and yes, it does everything way better than the S7 Plus, that does not mean that the S7 Plus is bad in any way, shape, or form. Back when this tablet came out in 2020, it was the emulation king in the Android scene. But there was also a lot of apps that were running very slow and very laggy on this tablet. But I just wanted to show off that a lot of improvements and a lot of updates have recently come into the Android emulating scene that actually make it more optimized to run on devices like this and utilize more of its power and its resources better, where now these apps are able to run games a lot smoother, with better consistent frame rate. You're able to upscale it more, and yes, there is the occasional hiccup and the occasional issue that I've come across and I've run into. And when it comes to emulating, you're always going to have to go back and tweak a few things because not every game runs the same on the emulator, and it's just a lot of craziness. But overall, this tablet is awesome. And I just want to give you guys an updated 2023 look at the emulation scene when it comes to the Tab S7 Plus. So here on this tablet, we have this Snapdragon 865 chip with an Adreno 650 GPU, 6 gigabytes of RAM, and a 1752 by 2080 Super AMOLED screen with 120 Hz and HDR10 support. Very powerful device, clearly. and some specs here also resemble the newer Tab S9 Plus as well. Now, I know everyone has their different methods and different preferences when it comes to emulation and how they set up their emulators, but what I like to use is a front end, which is a system menu that pretty much allows you to launch all of your emulators from one single interface. And you can pretty much customize it however you want to, depending on the front end that you use. And you can have all the box arts downloaded, organize it, and it's a really cool thing. And I actually started using it on this Tab S7 Plus when I first bought it back in 2020. So the one that I've been using for quite a while has actually been a front end called Dig. And Dig, for the most part, has served me well and has worked fairly well with all my emulators, and also organizing itself and doing all these other things as well that it does. And when it comes to Dig, honestly, all I had to do was just open up a file path and tell Dig where all of my ROMs are on my SD card on my tablet, and then it'll automatically know which systems these games are linked to, and it'll automatically organize all of my ROMs into those systems, and it actually worked fairly well for me. But recently, Dig has been having a lot of issues, and it's pretty much issues that have been happening with Android 13, which is the current Android OS that these tablets are running on. I mean, before this, when I was using Dig around 2020 to 2021, it was working perfectly fine. I wasn't having any issues with it, but doing some research on this, a lot of people were also having issues with Dig on Android 13, to the point where they had to use older versions of Dig that worked well and actually not only organize their games correctly, but also correctly find the ROMs that were in their folders. Because when I was trying to manually sync some games here, Dig would freeze up, not all of my ROMs would show up. ROMs that were packaged in with, let's say, PSP games ended up being listed as a PS3 game, even though this was meant to be for PSP. So it was a lot of little issues like that that kept happening with me, and it even got to the point where the front end was just not reading and not properly going into my SD card to pull out the ROMs. So then I just said, screw that, I'm tired of messing around with this, and I started looking for a new front end. And then this is when I found this really cool new front end that is actually fairly new. It's called Daijisho. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but this front end is so cool because it did everything that Dig was doing for me, but now it's doing it way more efficiently, and I actually have more customization options with this. And believe it or not, it's actually more UI friendly. And I actually love this much more. So all the systems that I'm going to be testing, the oldest is going to pretty much be the NES and the Genesis, and then we're going to go all the way up to the Wii and Gamecube. I am not going to emulate Switch games on this tablet. I am still looking for a modded Nintendo Switch, one of the original Nintendo Switches, so I can back up my own games and emulate them, simply because I don't feel too confident, and I actually don't know very well how to emulate Switch on these tablets. So I'm pretty sure the Tab S7 Plus can emulate Switch a lot better, especially with this Yuzu app that actually recently came out. I'm pretty sure the Tab S7 Plus can do a fairly good job with it. But still, I feel like the Switch emulation scene for the Android is fairly new and it's fairly recent, and I still feel like we have a lot yet to see when it comes to it. But I'm pretty sure 3 years down the line, we'll have a video sort of like this where we're running Switch games on the Tab S7 plus 3-year emulation video where we're running Switch and it's running amazing. But for now, I just feel like it's not worth it to emulate Switch, especially since I don't feel too comfortable getting games without it being my own games that I already owned. So to start off, we're going to play some NES games. I'll open it up here in the front end, and then once I press on the game, it'll take me directly to the game. And for this emulator, I will be using RetroArch. All the information, resolution, and everything else that I'm running this game on, and any other game will be displayed here, so do pay attention to that. As you can see, there are no issues running the NES games. You can play any NES game, 60 FPS all day long. You can probably upscale it as much as you want to. I only had it here at 1080p because that's really what I like to emulate my games at. You already know we gotta play one of my favorite games of all time, Sonic and Knuckles. Next up, we got the SNES, another great console here with great games on it. Another great console here, Sega Saturn. This console is amazing. Honestly, I really slept on this console, and like I said, I've never gotten a chance to play this, but thanks to emulation, I'm able to give this console a try, and here it is. Running at 60 FPS, 2x upscaled, and I'm pretty sure you can upscale it even more if you'd like to. Here I have some OG PlayStation games. You'll start to see the selection of games get a bit bigger as the consoles get a bit more demanding. So you guys kind of get the idea of how well these games run on the console. But so far with this console, I've had no issues. 2x, 60 FPS all day long.
Situation.
Here's some N64. I think that RetroArch is lying to me when it's saying that it's running full speed or at 60 FPS, because sometimes it feels like it's running slower, and the gameplay feels laggy. I don't know if that's how it's supposed to feel. I have no idea. I did not grow up with an N64. Honestly, I played a lot of my games through these emulators, but when you look at GoldenEye, it feels really laggy and really slow. But Donkey Kong N64, Donkey Kong 64 does show that it's running at 30 FPS, so it is kind of weird with this emulator. But I do know that this emulator is demanding. But here is some N64. Sega Dreamcast next. It's running amazing. I love the Redream emulator. I even paid for the extra features that it offers to support the devs, because this emulator kicks ass. 60 FPS, upscaled to 2K actually. I went all the way up to 1440p on this one, and it's running amazing. Game Boy here is running pretty easily, so you won't have any issues with this. PSP up next, runs amazing. I think this emulator, the PPSSPP emulator, is really, really good. And you can see here running demanding games at 60 FPS. It can be upscaled like probably 8x even. It can go all the way up to 4K, run perfectly fine. I have it here just normally at 1080p like I said, but it's running at 60 FPS and it's running amazingly. And all these games here look really good here on this emulator.
It moves you through the levels of the speed best suited to you. An ability to jump so high you defy the laws of gravity is a must-have accessory in Little Big Planet, and you're...
I really like this emulator. I'm using Melon DS. I have it customized to where I'm able to switch between the secondary or the main screen with just a push of a button on my controller. And that's really handy, especially when I'm playing games that I need to use the bottom screen instead of the top screen on the DS, so I can just switch. And the custom layout that I have here on my tablet, I actually have one screen a lot bigger than the other, so I definitely have to switch between those two. But this emulator takes great advantage of the stylus pen that you have, so it's perfect for this. And you know, again, this is like really cool stuff. But this right here is why I love emulation, because A, I can play all these games that I've played growing up. and I can play it a lot better than what it did on the original hardware. But Melon DS, Nintendo DS, running perfectly fine. 60 FPS, upscaled 2K. You can run all these games all day long. Now we're finally getting into the big stuff here. We got some Gamecube. There are a few games here that might have some hiccups and some stutters, like F-Zero GX. It'll be running here at 30 FPS. And this console, you will need to do some tweaking sometimes, because some games might run better on Vulkan, some games might run better on OpenGL. It's really up to you. And here I just have it set on one setting, with it upscaled to 2x, so you guys kind of see how it runs at 1080p. PS2, wow, it makes me so happy that I'm able to run PS2 games on my tablet, and a lot of them are running full speed 60 FPS. And this is one of those emulators that you kind of have to tweak some of the settings sometimes as well, but it is crazy to me that I'm able to run God of War 2 upscaled to 1080p and very, very, very few dips, but I am running this at 60 FPS. It is insane to me. I'm using the Ether XS2 emulator. I'm not using the Daemon PS2 emulator, because Ether XS2 has absolutely stolen the PS2 emulation scene in Android. This app has made some amazing progress and is running these games so well. Literally back when this tablet came out, this app was not a thing. Like, this app was not doing what it's doing now. Like, we pretty much had Daemon PS2 as an option. Now look at Ether XS2. Like, this is awesome. I love this, and this is exactly why I feel like it's important to come back and test out these emulators on these older machines, because you'll never know exactly how much more performance you can get out of these chips, especially after all of these updates that have been coming out, because this right here is absolutely awesome. Now we're running some 3DS games here. Again, another emulator that completely surprised me. I'm using Citra here, and I really like this emulator. It's pretty similar to the Nintendo DS one, where you're able to swap screens and you're able to do things like that, as well as use your stylus if need be, here on this emulator as well. There is something that I wanted to point out here that it actually took me by surprise. When I was running a 60 FPS hack here on this console, it actually sped up my games to a very weird speed to where everything just felt sped up. And so I literally had to turn it off and have it run normally. I don't know why that was happening, but it wasn't happening in some other games. Like, for example, it wasn't happening here on the Dead or Alive Dimensions game, but it was happening for Donkey Kong and for Mario 3D Land. So I really don't know what that issue is, but definitely wanted to point that out just in case you guys might also try and see that there is a 60 FPS hack for a certain game. I was able to run some games here at 60 FPS totally fine, and I actually did test it out going all the way up to 4K, and it still ran fine, but honestly, I'd rather just have it normally at 1080p because it's like that's all I need. And it's not even going through the full screen, so I mean that's totally fine with me if that's what I have to use. And lastly, I wanted to save the worst for last. Not because the Wii was a bad console by any means. I just think it's a pain in the ass to emulate this thing. Because the button mapping, I still to this day don't understand it. I've tried emulating it before, and trying to emulate a Wii controller to your Xbox controller is really hard. And in this emulator, when I tried to do the same thing here on Dolphin, it was just not mapping my controller correctly. It just kept doing some weird stuff, and it literally got to the point where like my joystick was just not working properly within the game. So like my characters were not turning the correct way. Like if I was trying to turn right, they would keep turning left. I don't know, it's so weird. But either way, this tablet was not running Wii games that well. There was a lot of issues, audio issues even too, because of the slowdown. And I was running it all here at 1080p, as you can see here, and it was just not running well. I bet if you lowered it down probably to like 480p, even to just its native resolution, it'll probably run a lot better. But I honestly really don't like emulating Wii games on here. I might get one of the Dolphin sensor bars and hook up one of my Wii controllers and emulate that way, and probably just turn down the resolution. But for now, I'm really turned off on emulating Wii games. So overall, the purpose of this video isn't just to show you the power of the S7 Plus when it comes to emulation, but also that maybe it's fine and it's a good idea for you to go back and check out the emulation performance on your older devices, because as emulation gets better and better and these emulators are more worked on and they become more optimized for these current chips and GPUs that we have, and it just becomes more accessible. And then you start to see that, hey, maybe this device has more worth than what I initially thought it had. And so for me, I love my S7 Plus. I loved emulating on it, but there was a lot of games that it couldn't run very well. But it was an absolute shock to me to see how much better these emulators have gotten on the S7 Plus. And maybe 3-4 years down the road, we'll see newer emulators come out that run even better with these systems, and it'll just shake up the scene again. Because like I said, that PS2 emulator that I mentioned, that emulator is amazing and I love it. At the end of the day, I feel like these tablets and these systems are getting more and more and more powerful, but the emulators have yet to catch up to truly use the full potential of these chips. And so we're not really running into more of a power issue like how we did before, but now we're running more into an issue with the emulator itself that is not well optimized, and that it's not able to take the full advantage of these systems. But that's all I have for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys like to emulate? But that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. What do you guys think about emulation? Do you guys love emulating? What's your favorite console to emulate if you do like to emulate? I love emulating the Gamecube. I think the Gamecube is one of the best consoles ever made, and I'm really sad that I never owned one growing up.